Welcome back, everybody, to Silver and Black today, an Audacy Sports original podcast, also heard on 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas, as well as 98.5 The Bet. We appreciate you being with us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Also, our video brought to you by our good friends at BetUS. And today we're joined by one of our favorite guests and one of your favorite guests, a guy we love talking football because every time we do, we learn a lot. And that is Brian Baldinger, of course. Right. Baldy is here. He is the NFL insider, of course, at Audacy Sports, also NFL Network analyst. And by the way, if you don't already subscribe to The Best Football Show with Brian Baldinger, you're missing out. Make sure you do that. Baldy, thanks for joining us here and appreciate you talking Raiders today.
My pleasure. I mean, there's a lot probably to unwrap here and try to figure out how this thing went this far south this quickly, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, and I want to start with one because there, like you said, there's multiple reasons why the Raiders are sitting at 2-8. But one of the reasons we've talked about a lot here, and we go back to when we talked to you before the NFL draft, and your words echo in my head and Mo's head every time we talk about it, and that is when we asked you about Raiders' needs, the first thing you said is, got to get a quarterback, right? They were unable to do that. They signed Gardner Minshew, which at the time, look, Minshew came off a pretty good year with a better play caller, of course, in Indianapolis, and has not been able to attain that. And of course, the Raiders had the issue with the offensive coordinator there. But talk about that too, because we fans struggle, I think, sometimes to understand that, because we talk about quarterbacks being the most important thing, and then they hear us say, well, the trenches are important too. But with the Raiders and that quarterback situation still not resolved, how big does that hang over a franchise in today's NFL?
Well, it's everything. If you don't get that position right, the Jets are going through it right now. If you don't get that position right, everybody ends up getting fired. General managers, coaches, coordinators, they all get fired. You've gone through 3 quarterbacks this year. None of them have been able to provide the necessary play. And this weekend, you're going to see the guy that was taken right behind you in the draft in Bo Nix. Mm-hmm. And all you've seen this guy do with great coaching is just improve to the point where last week he threw 4 touchdown passes in a game, didn't come close to turning it over. So, I mean, you're going to see it firsthand, what a good quarterback can do and how a good quarterback can elevate those around him. And all of a sudden, he's exploding on the scene. They're a competitive team, maybe a playoff team, and you're where you're at right now. So it does start there. It starts up front with the offensive line and the quarterback. And that's how you start to build. You build your team. You find the signal caller. You figure out how to protect them, and then you figure out how to find the animals to go after that quarterback and chase them. And that's what Denver's doing right now, and they're right in front of you right now, and you're going to get a chance to look at how that is properly built.
Now, Baldy, we're an objective show, but I try to give Raider fans a little bit of hope and showing some examples or explain some examples of how teams can turn it over. Even though they look like a dumpster fire one year, you get the right quarterback, you get the right coach, all of a sudden, now you're a playoff contender. You look at the Houston Texans 2 years ago, you look at the Commanders this year, even though they've lost a couple of games, but Jayden Daniels looks like the real deal and the runaway favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Now, with the Raiders, is there too much? Would you say, is there a price too much to pay to move up to get your quarterback? Because there's a possibility that the Raiders may not have a top 3 pick this year because there are a lot of teams that have 2 or 3 wins. So if they're outside that range to get a top quarterback prospect, is there a price that you would say is too much to get your guy and possibly turn around that franchise?
Well, the only thing I'd say, Mo, is that there is no price if you absolutely are sure that he's the guy. I mean, Bo Nix wasn't the top pick. Drake May wasn't the top pick, but he's playing pretty good. In years past, Zach Wilson was the second pick. I mean, you go through the list of all the misses high in the draft. We can still look at what Brock Purdy is doing in San Francisco, and they had traded like you're suggesting. Was it too high to go up to get Trey Lance? Well, I mean, they knew within 2 weeks of that draft that Brock Purdy was a better player and a better prospect. Everybody could see it in San Francisco. So I would say it's not too high if you absolutely can strike gold. Then all the assets, it doesn't matter. You can figure that stuff out in free agency and draft better the way the Rams have drafted well in the lower rounds and found good players. So I would say, to your point, it's not too much, but you better be sure that the guy you get with that draft capital is the right guy.
Yeah, and Baldy, with you talked about some of those, like a guy like Trey Lance, and obviously the 49ers went big on him. But isn't it a case where, because the quarterback's so important, now you might not see the end result of it. If you do go high in the draft and get a quarterback and that quarterback doesn't work out, you got to try again, right? Because like you said earlier, the position is so important, and nobody's going to be out there with some guy who's going to be a franchise quarterback, letting him go or trade him off for draft capital, because that's what you need to win.
Well, you can't win. You can't hide your quarterback. You can't win without it. And so you look at the teams right now that are winning and winning consistently. They've got great quarterback play. Now, they've got a good organization, whether you're in Buffalo or Kansas City or Philadelphia. They got a great organization surrounding that quarterback, and they never stop building around him. And so, the Eagles fell off the map in the final 6 games last year, and they went out and got Saquon Barkley. And, he's going to be probably the offensive player of the year. My guess is at this point, I don't think that's going to slow down the way he's playing right now. But, they never stop building around Jalen Hurts. And so that's why they're, they've been to a Super Bowl. They've been to the playoffs, basically going to go 4 years in a row with Jalen. Buffalo's going to go and win another division title for the 5th year in a row with Josh Allen. I mean, you got to have that. You got to have that. You got to have stability. But the quarterback gives you stability when you find out that he can play. Guys, all of a sudden, coordinators look better and coaching staffs look better. And guys, if you're really good, you might lose your coordinator. But you look at just what the Chargers are doing. Justin Herbert has been there for 4 years or 5 years. They've done nothing. Mm-hmm. They got a great staff and a great organization now, and a group that knows what they're doing, a proven commodity. And now he's playing better than he's ever played before.
Now, Baldy, you mentioned the coaching staff and coaches and coordinators, and that's where I want to bring my next point to here, because the Raiders have a situation where we don't know what's going to happen with Antonio Pierce by 2025. If you're bringing in a new head coach, what are the qualities that you look for in a good head coach? Because for me, it's more than just the X's and O's, what he does on the sideline, calling 4th down plays or not, or whether to go for it. It's, can he build a quality staff? And that's why I like Dan Quinn last offseason, because he's shown that he can build a quality staff. I think that's one of the most important things that people forget when they're building around a quarterback, aside from what you're doing on the field. So what are you looking for in a head coaching candidate if you're a GM bringing in for a team that's in a rebuild situation?
Well, like Dan Quinn took a team to a Super Bowl, and then they didn't, they kind of disappeared after that. They lost Kyle Shanahan, and, Matt Ryan didn't play at an MVP level after that. But, he, in the second try, he did exactly what you're talking about, Mo. He brought in Joe Witt Jr. with him from Dallas. He brought in Cliff Kingsbury, who spurned a couple other teams. But he's a good coordinator. He's a good offensive coach, and he's a good fit with what Jaden is doing. So sometimes the second time around is good. But if you can find a guy, and look, Harbaugh has been through this thing before. He's won everywhere he's ever been. There's only one Jim Harbaugh. They're hard to find, guys that can build the toughness in a team. That's why, even though in Pittsburgh, Mo, they haven't won a playoff game since 2016. Mike Tomlin he's just a master. To your point, he does a whole lot more than coach one side of the ball. He's a motivator. He gets guys excited. Guys want to come play for him. They've got the right front office right now, getting them the players, getting them the quarterback that he didn't have in Kenny Pickett. And so a lot of things have to go right. But that coach, he's got to do a whole lot more than motivate the quarterback or the offense or the defense. Like, he's got to set the standard. And I think Antonio Pierce believes he can do that. I don't know that everything else around Antonio right now, including the quarterback, the offensive play caller, the staff, the front office, I don't know if everything around him is right now.
Well, and Baldy, just building on that a little bit, because what Antonio Pierce was able to do last year was admirable, right? He did a good job. He stepped into a bad situation. Talk about, though, the difference. When you're a head coach and you come in and you're saving the locker room, basically, why the players had such an affinity for him, because he was a player, obviously, as well, so he understands them well. But he came in, the Josh McDaniels disaster happens. The difference between that and then starting and running the team and being, in essence, the CEO, that big difference. We have not seen a lot of coaches be able to go from one to the other. Why do you think that is?
Well, in Antonio Spears, he's got a great deal of lack of experience. He kept his defensive staff, which was good. And look, like if you just look at last week's game in Miami, right? So, Tua is getting rid of the ball so fast, okay? But it's a 17-12 game in the fourth quarter. It's a one-score game.
Right.
It's anybody's game. The quarterback didn't make plays. Brock Bowers did everything he could to help win that game for him. Jacoby Myers, they got two playmakers. The offense line was horrible, right? These got dominated up front. They couldn't run the ball at all. And so you just see, like, Antonio can do certain things. He's got a rookie center there. He got destroyed by Benito Jones and Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell. Like, they're not good enough up front right now to go win that game on the road. They hung in there. They hung in there really good. They're minus 15 in turnover ratio. In 10 games, you're minus 15. You're giving it up 1.5 times a game. And that last game, Sunday, was a 7-possession game. That's how the Dolphins played it. They possessed the ball. You got 7 possessions. The quarterback isn't good enough. The offensive line isn't good enough. So I want to like Antonio, and I believe in Antonio, but he can only do so much. He can't block that front of Miami's that dominated him. He can't make the plays at quarterback that Minshew can't make. So they have to improve the team. And so is that Antonio? Like, I think they were motivated to play. I didn't see guys laying down. I didn't see any of it. I saw a 17-12 game in the fourth quarter on the road, a winnable game. But the same things outside of the game in Baltimore this year, where Minshew played great, and Devontae and Brock Bowers were outstanding against a bad secondary. Outside of that game, they're not good enough at quarterback or on the offensive line right now, or probably at running back, for any coach to win right now.
So we talk about improving that team and doing the right things with the personnel, right? Tom Susko is now the GM. There's a lot of buzz about Tom Brady. And Mark Davis has already mentioned that he wants Tom Brady involved in some of these football decisions that he's botched in the past. If you're Tom Telesco, how do you feel about that? Tom Brady maybe coming in and making some of these decisions when you have a background in scouting players, and Tom Brady, while he's arguably the greatest player of all time, doesn't have the same background as you do.
Yeah, well, I would take the input. If you're looking at a quarterback, like, I might have Tom sit in there when the quarterbacks start marching through. I'd have Tom Brady sit through there and listen to the interviews and interview these guys. Because maybe there's something Tom sees in a guy. Maybe there's something a quarterback says, whether Shedeur Sanders, whoever it might be next year, Quinn Ewers, I don't know, like all the guys are coming out, but Cam Ward, whatever. I wouldn't mind having Tom Brady sit in there and kind of poke some holes in these guys and try to figure out what's inside them, and do they have that ingredient that a lot of people miss on. So from that standpoint, now, if Tom Brady is looking at right tackles, I don't know if he's going to go study right tackles. But I wouldn't mind having Tom Brady in there when it comes time to figuring out the quarterback situation and trying to get that right now.
Yeah, and does he? If he is involved in however he's involved on the football side, because he does have those restrictions, Baldy, because of his Fox contract. Now, if he walks away from the TV contract, then it's a different story. Then he can kind of open up and do a little more. But if you're Tom Brady, how much does that mean for the Raider organization, perhaps in attracting people, if he's more involved, attracting people? Because listen, Mark Davis, not criticizing him, I think he's tried always to do what's best for his team and make decisions. He doesn't interfere with the football side like we've seen in other cities, but he just hasn't made decisions that have panned out. Will Tom Brady's presence there maybe help the Raiders recruit and overcome some of that past of not making good football decisions?
I'm not sure, but I'll tell you a quick story. I was on the sideline with Tom a couple weeks ago, and I was asking him about one of the quarterbacks in the game. I'm not going to say the game or the player, but I have a pretty high opinion on the quarterback. And I kind of shared that with Tom Brady, and Brady gave me about 4 or 5 different examples of why I had a little inflated feeling about this particular guy. And after he said it, I didn't flip on my opinion, but it changed my opinion. I'll tell you that. And so, look, his standard for what it takes to win in this league is at the very highest. And so I hope that Tom Brady, I don't know exactly all the parameters about Fox and being a part owner of the Raiders and all. I don't know all the parameters. I see him talking to players every Sunday. I've been on the sideline twice with him now, and I see players coming up to him. I see players like sharing their I see him talking to everybody. They all want to come talk to him. So, and coaches as well. So I don't know all the parameters and restrictions. I don't really understand it. But at the same time, I want his input when it comes to picking a quarterback next year for the Raiders.
Yeah, absolutely. And Baldy, thank you so much for your time today. One last thing before we let you out, you talked about the Eagles and how well they're playing right now. Who else in the NFL to you, maybe on the AFC side, is really impressive? Because it's been a very competitive year. A lot of teams very close in the standings, and of course the Chiefs got out despite not playing their best ball to that undefeated record before they lost this past week. Who else is catching your eye so far in the NFL as we get closer to playoff time?
Well, I mean, what the Chargers did last week against Cincinnati was unbelievable. I mean, Joe Burrow put on an MVP of performance, and they overcame that. And then they made 3 stops in the fourth quarter, and they adjusted some routes on that drive with 45 seconds to go win the game. It's pretty amazing. To see what Denver did to Atlanta, they took them apart. Like, they just flat out whipped them on both sides of the ball. And then, like what Buffalo did, I mean, that offensive line of Buffalo can do anything you want them to do. Ahmed Osiris Torrance went toe-to-toe with Chris Jones and shut him out. Like, I mean, nobody does that to Chris Jones. So those are 3 teams. And you watch what Houston does now. Once they get Danico Autry, Will Anderson, and Danielle Hunter all together, and the defense finally gets healthy, Jimmy Ward at safety, they'll get Lassiter back, the linebackers are back. You watch, and Nico Collins back in line. Watch what Houston does in the last 6 games of the season. I mean, this is going to be a wild postseason in this postseason year.
I know. I'm looking forward to it already. Baldy, appreciate it. Make sure you check out Brian on his show, the Best Football Show, and also obviously on NFL Network. Thanks, my friend. We appreciate the time today.
My pleasure, guys. You bet. Anytime.
Right,
I'll talk
take care.
to you soon.
All right, there you have it. Brian Baldinger, Mo, some good stuff there, not only on the Raiders, but also clearly on the NFL. It's always great talking to Baldy, and hey, he always puts it out there and doesn't sugarcoat it. And I know for Raider fans who listen to the show, it's tough to hear, but some work to be done.
He also gave us an anecdote on Tom Brady's quarterback assessments. So Tom Brady may be a cornerback, I don't want to say scout, but you may want him in the room when you're picking out your quarterbacks in the 2025 draft. If you're the Raiders deciding on who to draft early, middle of the round, maybe in the second round, day 2. Maybe you take 2 quarterbacks, like the 49ers did with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, but you want Tom Brady in the room, apparently.
Yeah, and at the combine, right? Yep. And maybe the Senior Bowl. I mean, all these different things. So again, always great to have Baldy on. Such a great guest and so generous with his time. Of course, he is our NFL insider here at Audacy Sports, and we appreciate it. All right, we're going to step aside for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the game coming up against the Broncos. And then later in the show, of course, we get to the Raider Nation Mailbag. We'll get to your calls and text messages and emails. No emails this week. I'll text and phone. So we'll get to those as well. A reminder, our video brought to you as always by our good buddies at BetUS. We're coming back right after this. Hey, everybody, it is Scott Branson with Silver and Black today. I want to tell you about our good friends at BetUS. We've told you about this special promotion, 150% sign-up bonus if you use our special code that, of course, is YouTube150. But let me tell you why we love BetUS and why Mo and I are betting our football there. First of all, check out the website, mobile app, all great stuff. Not only do they give you great odds, but they give you quick payouts and so many options. You can create your own prop bets, parlay them together with the parlay builder, the prop builder. Just amazing stuff here. We appreciate everything that these guys do. Not only can you bet NFL football like we are, as you can see here, but you could bet on everything at BetUS. I mean, you could have bet on the presidential election that just happened. You can bet on everything from football to soccer to hockey to baseball futures and all those prop bets we're talking about. Really fun stuff. NBA is ramping up, obviously, with the beginning of the season. A lot of crazy things happening there. So if you're into the NBA action, you can find it as well. Listen, BetUS, the best place, where we bet our sports. So make sure you go check it out. And again, make sure you get that special 150% bonus. That's right, 150% bonus up to $2,000 just using the code YouTube150. Not only that, they're going to give you your second and third deposit up to $2,000. They're going to give you 125%. So bam, it's a double whammy. Make sure you check out the folks at BetUS. And don't forget, YouTube150 is the code, YouTube150 for that special offer. And we will see you next time talking about our good friends BetUS, who bring you the video from Silver and Black today. Good people, great stuff, great place to bet your sports. All right, welcome back to segment 2 of Silver and Black today here on Audacy Sports Original Podcast. Also heard on the radio. Hello to Las Vegas on 101.5 KDON and, of course, 98.5 The Bet. We appreciate it. If you're watching us, thank you for watching us and not turning away. Yes, and the video brought to you by the good folks at BetUS. In fact, BetUS got to remind you of the promotion. If you go and make your first deposit up to $2,000, guess what? They're going to give you a 150% sign-up bonus thanks to BetUS and us here at Silver and Black today. All you got to use is the promo code YouTube150. That's YouTube150, and you will get that bonus. And not only that, they'll throw in 125% on the second and third deposit up to $2,000. And that, again, is YouTube150 from our good friends at BetUS. And a special thanks, again, to Brian Baldinger for joining us. Baldy's always good. I know our listeners absolutely love when Baldy's on the show, and we got a question in there as well from one of the listeners. So good stuff, Mo. Not surprising. I mean, I think he laid it out pretty good, and he even mentioned. I know he knows the Raiders are playing the Broncos, but he mentioned the Broncos, and we're going to talk about the Broncos now. But Raiders, they just got to get to work. That's all.
Get to work. They a lot of work to get to right now at this point in the season, especially when you're 2-8, losing 6 straight. But if you're looking ahead at this matchup, you're looking at Bo Nix, who's not making a lot of mistakes. 6 touchdown passes, 0 interceptions, only 1 fumble, but it was recovered by the Denver Broncos. So they're not turning the ball over. They're playing pretty good defense. Baldy just mentioned it. They took apart the Atlanta Falcons from start to finish. So the Raiders. And I mentioned this on Twitter. They've allowed 31.3 points per game over the last 6 contests.
Yeah.
They can't afford to fall behind. 2, we already saw in week 5 in that first loss to Denver, they can't afford any turnovers, especially in critical areas of the field, the red zone. And 3, they have to be able to find some type of rhythm on offense. I know they've struggled to run the ball for basically the entire season outside of the Cleveland Browns game, but with Alexander Madison banged up, Zamir White banged up, what are the Raiders going to get from that run game that's already been ineffective? Is Amir Abdullah and Dylan Albee, are they going to be your top 2 running backs for this football game? The Raiders have to be creative. This is, as Antonio Pierce said, and we've said on the show, they have nothing to lose. This is where they can let all their creativity out there on the field, because if they lack it, they're going to fall behind pretty quick, and that defense is going to get on top of the Raiders, and it could be an ugly football game.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at the Broncos too as we switch our focus to this game coming up, and that is the Broncos have. I mean, started off a little rough, and people thought, what so many thought about the Broncos, that okay, Bo Nix, wow, not great, and they're going to struggle and they're not going to win. Now, Bo Nix has been on a run, Mo. I mean, Baldy talked about it in the last segment, but if you look at what he's been able to do, it's pretty remarkable because, and I know some people aren't convinced because of who they've beat, but listen, as a rookie quarterback, you can find examples of rookie quarterbacks playing bad schedules too and still struggling, because it is the NFL. Even the worst NFL team, you're talking about professional football players. But you look at Bo Nix and what he's been able to do. What do you think has been the difference for him in those first few weeks? Is it the comfort in the system? And of course, Sean Payton there. Yes, Drew Brees was a great quarterback, but just like all the situations with great quarterbacks and great coaches who win Super Bowls, it's a little bit of both. But what do you see over the evolution from really week 3 and 4 when he was struggling to now being in week 12, where he's now in the last 8 games gone 14 touchdowns, only 1 interception, and a very high completion percentage?
I look at 2 things. I think it's 2 aspects in particular on offense. Number 1, he has now a connection with Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton is the Denver Broncos' number 1 wide receiver. They didn't really have a strong rapport, obviously, because Bo Nix is a rookie. But over the last 3 weeks, Courtland Sutton and Bo Nix have been connecting a whole lot. Courtland Sutton only has 1 touchdown, but when it comes to the yardage, he's been over the 100-yard mark a couple of times in the past few weeks. The other thing is what I talked about with the Raiders, and I've been screaming about this for the past 7-8 weeks with the Raiders. The Denver Broncos now have balance on offense. I know they have a sort of like a 3-man backfield with Audric Estime, their rookie 5th rounder, and Jalil McLaughlin and Javonte Williams, and they kind of take turns getting the most carries out of the backfield. But he has the support. You, I, and Evan always talk about complementary football, right? Well, they have complementary football on the offensive side of the ball now with the run game with Estime, McLaughlin, and Williams. So they're able to take some pressure off of Bo Nix, so they're not having to ride him to victories and points. And they can also hand the ball off and have some balance and keep teams off balance on defense.
Yeah, Estime was a guy I so wanted the Raiders to be able to get, but he went too early for them. You remember me talking about that, of course, because I'm a Notre Dame shill. I get it. But the thing I wanted to talk about too, and just with Bo Nix, I mean, and you talk about comfort level, and like you said, that Cortland Sutton relationship so big for quarterbacks and receivers to kind of once they get into that rhythm, because you anticipate, the NFL being a quarterback, the passing game, and throwing to spots, all those things that you do, it becomes a feel. It's not, yes, you got to keep doing it over and over again, but you get to know somebody, you get to do that. I mean, you look at Nix last week, just to point this out, he was 28 of 33, 84.8%, almost 85%, basically. 307 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 145 quarterback rating, Mo, in that 38-6 win. It's the only second rookie quarterback in the history of the NFL to pass for 300 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 140 or higher in a game. The last one and the only other to do it was C.J. Stroud last year. Now, I'm not comparing Bo Nix to C.J. Stroud just yet, but, 3 touchdowns. He had the 2 passing, 1 running against the Raiders last time in week 5. And over the past 7 weeks, he's 5th in the NFL in passing yards. And he's only one of 2 quarterbacks with 10 pass touching touchdowns. So the Raiders, who have a depleted secondary, Mo, are really going to be up against it. Even though they're at home, they're going to be up against it against this Broncos team who is really clicking on offense. And like you said, the Raiders haven't been able to find that rhythm or consistency on offense themselves. And the Broncos defense is pretty dang good. I mean, I hate to say it because I don't want fans to get down because the game's not until later, but this could be a very difficult day for the Raiders.
Especially if the injuries are serious that they have in the secondary. So Nate Hobbs didn't play in the last game. Ja'Cory Bennett was banged up early. Jack Jones banged up. If they're missing 2 of their top 3 cornerbacks, afraid to see what it could look like as the game wears on with Bo Nix throwing the football the way he's throwing the football right now. Again, you have Sean Payton, who's, it's a Raider podcast, but let's be honest here. She's one of the better play callers one of the top play callers in this league. So I shouldn't be surprised that Bo Nix looks like a serviceable quarterback right now. And when you combine that with the Raiders' injuries and the way their defense has been on the decline over the past 6 weeks, as I said, 31.3 points allowed in their last 6 games. It's not trending well. But if they can but one thing I will say, keep Bo Nix in the pocket. Don't let him hurt you with his legs. And just be able to match up with their receivers. They have a shot. But again, they can't turn the ball over as they did in the first meeting, and they have to do something with their running backs on the ground.
Yeah, the Broncos have weak points too. Don't get me wrong. They're not the Eagles at this point, or a team like that, or the Bills, or someone like that who's just playing so lights out that you don't think that this could be a competitive game, because I think it can be. But if you look at that Raiders defense that you just talked about from the decline, and we talked about that last show as well, Mo, but you were doing some research for one of your pieces and talking about it, because I get a lot of people that, our fans and listeners like to talk to us a lot. And so we go back and forth with discussion. A lot of them point to the injuries on defense for the Raiders, going back to the beginning of the year. And of course, it's gotten worse over the last several weeks. But you did some research. Talk about the impact of injuries on the defense and why that sometimes maybe it's too much of an excuse. It's valid, no question, but maybe not as big as some people think in the reason why the defense has had this decline.
I'm not going to, ignore the fact that having injuries is going to impact a football team production. You're going to have a drop off when you go from your starting cornerback to your 3rd, 4th stringer. When Decameron Richards is on the field instead of Ja'Cory Bennett, there's going to be a drop off, obviously. But as I said, when you look at the Raiders' numbers as far as allowing points, it's been happening since early October. I think some of it is I'm not blaming Patrick Graham for this, but you're seeing some communication issues. So I'll point out one example with the Dolphins, and we talked about it on Tuesday. The cover zero play where Jonnu Smith runs free.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what is it, but with the Raiders in cover zero, I don't know, Scott, if you remember this, but the Rams game where Baker Mayfield throws the game,
Yes, same one.
the go ahead touchdown, that was a cover zero play. So
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Graham, the cover zero stuff. Whenever you hear cover zero or see cover zero for the Raiders, it could be bad news. It could be bad news because we saw it with the Rams. We just saw it with the Miami Dolphins and Jonnu Smith. Cover zero is bad news for the Raiders. No, but I'm just saying that some of it is injuries. Some of it is communication on the back end, and that is coupled with injuries because when you have backups in, they're not used to communicating with some of the players that are on the field because they haven't been in action. So that's something that you're going to have to work on in practice. Switching off, switching coverages, disguising coverages, getting the play call into the guys and helping them line up where they should be lined up. Those are things that they're going to have to iron out on the practice field leading up to the football games.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we'll see what they do. But some of those issues, like communicate, those are some of the issues that I think have permeated this team and organization over the course of the year on both sides of the ball. Baldy talked about some of the lack of talent and just getting beat up front. Absolutely true. But I also we're seeing some of that too, even with route running and quarterback play. So this is indicative of a team that's struggling from top to bottom. So it'll be interesting to see how this game unfolds. We'll see if the Raiders, can maybe put a halt to this Broncos steam engine that seems to be headed more towards the playoffs than anyone anticipated. So we'll see how it all works out. All right, we're going to take our final break here before we come back for the Raider Nation Mailbag. Mo and Scott here on Silver and Black today, an Audacy Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio, 101.5 KDON in Las Vegas. And by the way, our video. You're watching us, and that is all because of the good people at BetUS. Again, you can get that promotion 150%. Use YouTube 150 as your code. Deposits up to $2,000. That first one, you're going to get that bonus. We're coming back right after this break with your calls. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. It's the home stretch here, the final segment of this edition of Silver and Black today, an Audacy Sports original podcast, also heard on the radio in Las Vegas, 101.5 KDON and 98.5 The Bet. HD2 in Las Vegas. Skockle Branson, Mo Moten back with you. By the way, if you don't already subscribe to the podcast, what are you waiting for? Go wherever you get your audio and look for Silver and Black today. Subscribe, rate, and review. We appreciate it. If you're watching us on video, it's brought to you by the great folks at BetUS. Again, 150% sign-up bonus. Use the promo code YouTube150 up to $2,000 and start playing today because you need to, right? I mean, you can be like Mo and make all that money betting football or whatever you like to bet. So there you go. But we're going to get into your calls now, and we appreciate it. By the way, if you want to be a part of the show, 702-900-7869, 702-900-7869 is a number. We try to get to all the calls we can. If you don't get on and you left a message, don't worry. We'll get you on next time. And if you want to call and refresh your call because it's a couple days later, do it. It's okay. We love it. Appreciate you very much. But we want to get to it. Mo, we got some good ones today. We had some bangers, as they call them, as the kids call them, bangers.
Kids call them bangers.
Right? All right. But thank you guys for doing that. Okay. First up, we have our good friend Ron in Virginia. He called a couple weeks ago, but here's Ron's take. And it's interesting. I had somebody comment on YouTube. I was looking through the YouTube comments, which I do occasionally. And he was like, "God, you guys are so negative." And I'm like, "Well, we're not trying to be negative. We're just kind of being objective. Like, we can't, we talk about Brock Bowers and his great performance, and we talk about good performances, but when you're 2-8, it's hard. We want to give the audience something to look forward to. So we try to focus on some of those things, but unfortunately, overwhelmingly, it's not great. But anyway, here's Ron from Virginia. Let's see if Ron's being positive with unicorns and rainbows.
Hey, Scott, Mo, this is Ron. I'm calling from Virginia. I called earlier. I think I talked too long. I got cut off, so I'm calling back. So I'll just kind of keep it to the point. Like I said, just watched the Raiders lose another one, get blown out again. I'm pretty much over the Antonio Pierce experiment. I think he has to go. But one of the questions I was maybe ask you guys' opinion on this. It seems like the defense has continued to regress. I get it. I understand that there are injuries. They have a lot of people injured, right? But problem that I see, like I said, it's probably not a popular opinion, but I was thinking maybe not only Antonio Pierce, but maybe Patrick Graham probably needs to go too. And I'm not saying this because of, like I said, I understand the injuries, but it just seems like the Raiders always seems to lose games on, dumb mistakes. People, making mental mistakes like yesterday, the touchdown, the long touchdown with John Smith when nobody covered the guy. Well, that seems to happen frequently with the Raiders on defense. And like I say, I understand these are backups in there, but, they just had a meeting with the players, talking about the practice and the way things are done, right? And I think you can put that on coaching because the bottom line, even though these guys are backups, they may not have the talent of the starters, but everybody gets a playbook, and you still, you should know the plays. Watching Spillane tell the guys what to do, and they didn't adjust, and then the guy runs wide open. It's like the second or third time this happened this year. It happened against Denver. They got lucky because Bo Nix overthrew the guy. It happened against Cleveland. They got called back on a penalty. But it just seems to be an ongoing thing with the Raiders over the years. So, like I said, they need to, like I said, I know it's hard to just continue hiring and firing coaches and doing this and that. But until they get somebody in there with some stability, this team is going to continue to go down the same road. Like I said, I'm over Antonio Pierce and maybe, the offense looks a little bit better under Turner, but I don't trust this regime to Pierce to groom a new quarterback, a rookie quarterback. Like I said, but you see what Denver and the Chargers have done. They got stability of coaching, and look what they're doing, the turnaround they get. But like I said, you guys keep up the good work and tell me what you think. Appreciate you.
All right, there you go. Ron in Virginia. And thanks, Ron. So quietly spoken, but really good call. I have a feeling Ron has like a booming voice like Barry White.
He's speaking in his inside voice, guys.
Yes, inside voice, but then he's like, oh, just rip it off. Anyway, Mo, how do you delineate player responsibility from the coaching they're either getting or not getting? Like, I think for fans, it's hard sometimes to look at that and say, okay, how much is on the player? How much is on the coaching?
It's tough because you don't know exactly what play is called. And sometimes you have to, not sometimes, but you have to go back and look at the film. If you're a film junkie, you're able to spot it right away sometimes not, because you're not in the huddle. As far as whose responsibility was it to do this and do that. But to get to Ron's point, and you can rewind it back to segment 2, Ron, we're basically on the same page.
Yeah.
We're standing on the same page. We talked about the same play. And the cover zero, as I joked, when the Raiders have a cover zero look on the field, it's not going to be good. But if you're a coach and you see a mistake like that happen, right? So then at the end of the day or during practice the following week, you got to make sure you make those corrections. You got to get all the players in the film room and say this can't happen again. But as Ron said, it seems like it's happening too frequently. And when it happens over and over again, then it goes on the coaching staff. Because if it happens once, then you can say, okay, a player made a mistake. It happens. Mental error. We get it.
Even with backups, Mo? Even with a backup player?
Even with the backup, you say, okay, it happened. Flush it. We learn from this mistake. But when it happens over and over and over, repeated mistakes, then I feel it's more of a coaching issue, because then as a head coach or as a coordinator, you're supposed to get your guys in the room and be able to correct those mistakes and say, we made this mistake. We're going to correct it, make sure it doesn't happen again, or it happens less frequently. When it continues to happen, then you have to start to look at the coaching staff.
There you go. Ron in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Good call, man. We appreciate it very much. All right, next we're going on to Raider Easy, I think in the Bay Area. Here's Raider Easy.
Scott Moe, this is Raider Easy from the Bay. Welcome to Suck for Sanders season. How about it, fellas? Anyway, been enjoying the show, and especially want to give you guys a shout out for a really, I think, sharp and salient point one of you guys made. I can't remember which of you, but anyway, we'll give you guys both credit for this one. About our boy AP and about the conservative nature of his decision.
That was Mo.
Because I think we can summarize basically all of Antonio Pierce's problems in 2 words: decision making. Because as a leader, as a coach, and a motivator, he's good. He's good at that. He's a leader of men. You can give him all the credit in the world for that. But I think pretty much all of his problems fall under decision making, whether that's in-game decisions or it's putting together a staff, choosing personnel, so on and so forth. Those are all the decisions part of it. And the fact that he went and hired on so many consultants and advisors to help him with decision making just kind of points to that weakness and his own lack of confidence in his ability to make these decisions. And I think, as you pointed out, it might be stunting his growth as a head coach. Because if you rewind a little bit, you go back to, when he was hired on as the interim, his decisions were actually pretty good. He made some good decisions, like benching Jimmy G and starting Aiden O'Connell. That was a good decision. Like maybe giving Pat Graham a little bit more free reign with the defense. Another good decision. But I think when he stepped out of the substitute teacher role and had to become, the head coach, he might have, puckered up a little bit and retreated into a shell. And speaking of puckering up, I think that's also happening to our boy Pat Graham, because if you rewind back to like 2022, what his defense was like, let's go back to that Rams game where he was in a very similar situation where he lost some of his starters, specifically the DBs. His play calling just totally puckered up and he went straight man. Remember that final drive where he went man cover 0 and let Baker Mayfield just drive all the way down the field and score a touchdown?
Yes.
He kind of did the same thing this past weekend with the Dolphins. And it seems like when he doesn't feel like he has all of his dogs on the field, when he doesn't have all his guys, he kind of retreats. And I think we're seeing him regress back to that level. So anyway, just a couple thoughts today I wanted to share. Keep up the good work, fellas. Love the show. Later, out.
Dude. Raider easy.
Easy. Love it.
Dude. Not just because everything you said is something that Mo and I both have been saying those things since the hiring, by the way, but just because I know you're a big fan and I know, coming to that realization and watching for yourself, amazing. So good stuff. And Mo, that's the thing, it's remarkable to me. There's a lot of really good folks who cover the Raiders for traditional outlets, for fan outlets, all kinds of stuff. And people still don't talk about that angle that we hit here all the time, almost every show, which is about that coaching staff putting it together, and hiring all these advisors. But you, at the end of the day, got to make the decision. And the substitute teacher, I didn't think of that one before. That's a great one because it's different, right? It is. And so he encapsulated it perfect, and I think echoes what we've been saying for 6 months.
This is the Raider Cover 0 episode. I promise the audience that's listening, I did not hear any of the calls before we got on.
No, you don't. You never do.
And I never do. And I never listen to calls before because I want to hear it for the first time, just like you all. And I talked about the Cover 0, beware the Cover 0. And it's funny, Ron mentioned it out of Virginia. Now Raider Easy mentioning it. Beware of the Raiders Cover 0 look. It's not good. But what I will say to Raider Easy's call, and he made some very good points here, and it made me think about something philosophical. So I'm gonna be Socrates mode for a minute. When I started sports betting, right, I used to kind of look at what is this capper doing? What is this sports bettor thinking? What is their opinion? And I found out that the more opinions that I took in, the worse I was at it, because I was taking opinions from everyone else instead of just going by my own football knowledge and making my own decisions, so to speak, as very easy put it for Antonio Pierce. Instead of making his own decisions, he has all these advisors around him. And it could be, as Raider Easy said, stunting his growth or hurting some of his decisions and making good ones instead of bad ones. And I think if you're a head coach, it's good to have senior advisors on staff. Just like for me, when I was a beginning sports bettor, it was good for me to have these references and people to look to for advice and tips. But eventually, you have to go out there and you have to walk on your own. You have to listen to your own mind. What are your thoughts? You were hired to this job, right? The other people you're taking tips from and advice from, they weren't hired for this. This is your position now. You have to make your own decisions. You have to listen to your own mind. What do you think? I think a lot of times, even outside of the football profession, too many people are worried about, okay, I don't want to mess up, so let me listen to someone who's a little more experienced than me because I don't have the experience. And they're kind of dimming their own light. Like, you got this opportunity to be a head coach of the Raiders, to be in your position that you're in for a reason. They picked you for a reason.
Right.
You know, lean on your own insight, lean on your own information and knowledge, and that's the best way to go. Because if you're going to go out, you might as well go out on your own accord versus listening to someone else and losing out and saying, okay, I failed at this by listening to someone else instead of myself.
Right. And I think it points at the decision-making error by the owner, Mark Davis. Again, right? He tried to make the right decision, but it was the wrong decision because, as I've said numerous times over the several weeks, a head coaching job in the NFL is not an internship. It's not. You either have full faith that someone can do the job on their own, or you don't. Right? Doesn't mean you don't like the guy. Doesn't mean he didn't do great for the team last year. It just comes down to the fact that you don't want somebody. And I've had people defend AP to me to say, well, he's learning on the job. There's only 32 of those jobs in the world. It's not a learn on the jobs type of situation. I just don't believe that it is. Right. And so anyway, but Raider Easy, great call. We certainly appreciate you calling in on the show, and don't be a stranger. All right, we're going to get to the other calls now. Let's roll on to who we got here. Let's see. I got to look at my notes. And we have Chavi up in the Bay Area as well. 2 calls in a row from the Bay Area. Here we go.
Scott Moe, Chavi from the Bay Area. Just calling real quick. So I couldn't agree more with you about AP. I think it should be let go at the end of the season. I was a big fan of his last year because I saw things, he was aggressive and all that. Just hasn't transpired this year. I think he made a bad hire with Getsy. And then starting Minshew over Aiden. So again, right, like Mo said last episode, that there's a lot of uncertainty in coaching, the head coach, and the quarterback. But if AP is let go, which I think he should, I think PG should go as well. We haven't been able to stop the run. I know there's been a lot of injuries, so I think the whole coaching staff should go. But with that said, Tom Telesco doesn't have a good record of getting and hiring head coaches. So I hope Tom Brady, Seymour, whoever, helps in that process. Because, again, there's more uncertainty, like Mo said. Disappointing season. I hope that we're able to change it next year. Hopefully the draft does well. Also free agency. But, yeah, just looking forward to, again, next year. Like, that's always the same thing. Next year. But anyways, guys, appreciate it.
Sorry, man.
Have a good day.
All right, there's Chavi up in the Bay Area. And Mo, that's the thing. If Mark Davis, the last 2 coaching decisions and the people he's had help make those decisions, now I don't know how much he listens to them. We don't know what input they had. So it's hard. I don't want to criticize those people because I don't know. But based on the process the last 2 times, has not gone well. If he does the same process again with the same people involved, that's where, if I'm Raider Nation, I'd be really, really, really concerned and upset.
Well, I think Mark Davis was really handcuffed. I won't say handcuffed because he didn't have to do it because he is the owner. It's his decision. But I think the players speaking out really obviously swayed his decision. We talked about the sham interview process that the Raiders had, let's be honest, and interviewing 2 coaches who weren't even in the league last year. And Antonio Pierce. Once you saw that, you already knew where he was leaning. I think if he has an actual hiring process, he would get a better candidate. I wasn't over the hill with bringing in Tom Telesco, but as I've said on previous shows, so far his first draft class looks pretty good at the top. So I can't complain too much about that. You have to. For the first thing, if they do fire Antonio Pierce, and I will say this to Xavi and also Ron, who asked this, if Antonio Pierce gets fired, Patrick Graham is out of the door too.
Oh yeah, of course.
What if you fire the head coach? You're gonna. I know they retained Patrick Graham this year, but it was because Antonio Pierce is also on that staff with him. They were together on that previous staff.
Probably a good move.
Right, but if Antonio Pierce goes, Patrick Graham is gone too. So let's get that out of the way. But again, if the Raiders are serious about hiring a quality head coach, assuming if they fire Antonio Pierce, have a real hiring process. don't bring in a few guys who obviously aren't top candidates. No, bring in the best candidates you can bring in and pick the right person for the job. Because if you have basically one decent candidate and two guys who are basically coming off their couch, you're not going to get the best of the best. And you're seeing some of the results right now.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks for the call, man. Now it's Jacob from Fresno.
Cats, Gully, Golden State, and Midtown Mountain. This is Jacob from Fresno. What's up, guys? So, I know last week we went over the whole thing about AP, and I asked the question, what would he have to do to turn it around? And it seemed to be something that was, just not going to happen. Like, this idea that AP kind of wins out the rest of the season and just turns everything around. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to happen. But I do have a question here this week. And let me think about how I'm going to phrase it. I'm not going to say, why should I not? I'm going to say, am I wrong to be optimistic about the future of the Raiders with what I've seen? Because I came into the season, sort of like you guys, I thought we might win 7 games. I thought 7 games was realistic with what AP was given, right? We didn't have much of an offensive line. Jackson Powers-Johnson looked like a bright spot. Colton Miller, we thought that he was going to be healthier than he was. He isn't, right? The defense, we thought we were going to have Malcolm Kuntz. We thought Christian Wilkins was going to be available. We knew that we didn't have a quarterback. I knew that. I know some of Raider Nation thought that Gardner Minshew was going to come in and win a Super Bowl for some reason. That's not realistic. Like, you look at his Madden rating, the guy's like 74, probably less. No, I haven't looked because I'm too depressed to look at the roster. Anyway, if I'm looking at the season realistically, that's a realistic thing, right? Before the season, you think 7 wins. But now if I'm looking at it, I don't think it's too far-fetched to think that we might win 5 or 6 games. That's possible. It's still mathematically possible. You can't give me there, guys. Only 2 good math sometimes, but 2 plus 2 equals chicken. But still, hey, we got an opportunity here. We got an opportunity to end this season on a high note. And no matter what, we're going to be, top 15 in the draft. Even if we go on some killer streak, we're going to be in a good draft position. So here's what I'm saying. Am I wrong to be optimistic that I think a guy like Malcolm Kuntz can come back and make a difference? That Christian Wilkins can come back and make a difference? That we can possibly pick somebody up on the backside of the defense and make a difference, either in free agency or in the draft? That we can go and draft the wide receiver in the later rounds, and he'll be a difference maker. Brock Bowers, Am I wrong to think that? And a quarterback on top of all that. We got somebody coming. You guys let me know. Am I just head in the clouds, unrealistic? I don't know. I don't think I am. But I love you guys. You take it easy. Go Raiders.
There you go, Jacob in Fresno. And Mo, listen, first of all, Jacob, it's never wrong to be optimistic. You used a word at the end of your call there, realistic. If you're realistic but optimistic, I think you're fine. I love to, and I'm sure the people who want the team to tank on purpose hate your call, because I love that you're sitting there trying to say, okay, I'd love to see them go on a win streak at the end of the season, draft pick be damned. So I like that in a fan, because that's how I was as a fan. I wanted my team to win, even if they weren't going to make the playoffs and season's basically over. I wanted to see something positive come out of them. But Mo, you look at this, I think it goes back to the point you made a couple weeks ago about that I disagreed with you at the time, but I think you did a good job of articulating, was things can turn around pretty quickly.
They can. We just had Baldy on talk about getting the right quarterback, and of course that's a big part of the equation. I think you made this point, and I totally agree with the point too, that you also have to get the coaching staff correctly.
Yeah.
And right now, you listen to a lot of our callers, they don't think AP is that guy to build a quality coaching staff. I mean, the hiring of Luke Getsy, I know wasn't his first choice, but the hiring of Luke Getsy, let's not forget, he also fired his offensive line coach, which was his pick. He also fired his quarterbacks coach, which is his pick. And I've been ranting about Rich Scangarello from the beginning of the offseason, saying it's not a good hire, even though he's your quarterbacks coach, not a good hire. Fires him already. Yeah. But to Jacob's point, I don't think he's out of his mind to think they can turn it around. But they have to, nail the draft. They have to spend their money wisely. They're going to have close to $100 million in cap space. So they're going to have the money to spend to fill some of their needs. They're going to have, I would think, Christian Wilkins back from injury. We'll see what happens with Malcolm Kuntz. He should be available on a discount because he was set to become a free agent. Didn't play a snap this season because he got hurt before week 1. Assuming they bring him back, your defensive line should be better. You'll have a top draft pick. You'll have the money to spend. The Raiders would just need to get the quarterback position right. I know easier said than done, but if they do, there's room for a quick turnaround. I really do. I still do believe that.
Sure.
It's just for the fans out there who say we're too negative. I've been making this point now for months that you can turn it around. I said it to Baldy today. Again, look at the Houston Texans and how bad that franchise looked. Firing coaches left and right. Oh, their GM, Nick Caserio, doesn't know what he's doing. He's outside of the Bill Belichick cocoon. Doesn't know what he's doing in Houston. Look at Washington.
They were 4-13, Mo.
Not only that, but they were a mess from ownership down. We talk about ownership a lot being a problem.
Yeah.
Now Dan Snyder's no longer their owner there, but they got a lot right with the coaching staff, hiring Dan Quinn. Again, I will say it again. I was a big proponent of Dan Quinn, even though he was a retread. You bring in Cliff Kingsbury. We know what happened with the Raiders. That deal didn't get done. And then they draft Jayden Daniels. So the Raiders, if they can, I know it's asking a lot, but it can be done. They get the quarterback right. They get the coaching staff right. Mark Davis kind of steps back and let other people make the football decisions. All of a sudden, you have a team that can at least compete for a playoff spot. That's all I'm asking for. I'm not saying the Raiders are going to go to the Super Bowl next year if they get it all right. Can they be a team that competes for a playoff spot? And I think the answer is yes, if they get some of these things right that I talked about.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call, man. We appreciate it. All right, we're going to end the show here with our good friend Anders in Oakland. Here he is.
Hi, fellas. Anders from Oakland. And this one comes back a little bit to your last podcast together when you talked about the Raider way. Man, the Raider way thing has been a curse for so long. Seems like so many players have interpreted that as just being free to play undisciplined football, illegally hit anybody in sight and get penalized like 5 times a game. That's awesome. It's the Raider way. By a certain coach, it seems to mean swagger and talking about physicality and being a really cool guy. And by the supporters of this coach, the Raider way seems to come to mean finding coaches and players who embody just this outlaw image. And it sort of ends there. We're fine with just that. And all of that is wrong. The Raider way is about winning and not letting crap like image and swagger be the objectives. Just spouting violence and ill intent. It's just nonsense. And that's a problem with AP. He's all hat and no cowboy. He doesn't know how to coach or run a team or hire coaches. He's been talking about fundamentals for months, yet we're still failing the fundamentals. Shit, he can't even run a practice. It's like Little League out there. And now we find out that the players don't communicate with each other. We've seen zero improvement this season. That's all on coaching, all of it. It's simple. Antonio Pierce is not a good coach. There is nothing that says otherwise. And like they say in business, you never regret the people you fire. You regret the ones you don't. He's got to go. I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Bye.
Wow. Woof. Anders did not hold back.
You know what? When Anders speaks, he sounds like a business advisor. Like I feel like I could call Anders up if I'm running a company and say, "Hey, Anders, what do you think about this situation?" And he can problem solve it and point to the issue and kind of help me out on pointing out where do we go from here with this problem? What do you think is the root issue here? And it just sounds like that. And I like how he laid that out. He also used something that I've never heard in my life. All hat, no cowboy. I'm gonna use that.
Oh, you've never heard that before?
I've never heard that before. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know.
Being out west a little more, yeah, probably.
Yeah, but look, I can't argue with anything that Anders said. I'm sure there are a lot of people in the chat that will want to push back and say, Antonio Pierce, he's a great motivator. I think Baldy also mentioned that. But when it comes to the decision making, when it comes to hiring a staff, when it comes to he pointed out running a practice, the CBS report that came out that said players are complaining about downtime between practices. It's very clear that operationally he's lacking in a lot of areas, and you can't overcome that as a head coach.
No, I don't think so either, and no reason to pile on because I think Anders said it all really well. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of Silver and Black today. Of course, an Audacy Sports original podcast. Mo, real quick, let everybody know what you got coming up the rest of the week as we sit here on Thursday.
So you won't see me again until Sunday after the game. I don't know if I'll have on all black if the Broncos sweep the Raiders after the stronghold the Raiders have had on the Broncos. Maybe I'll wear all black. If they surprise, I'll wear a gray hoodie. But I'll be back on the Bleacher Report airways breaking down that game, win, lose, or tie.
All right, there you go. Make sure you catch that. Also, we'll be back with our post-game, myself and Murph with the voice of the fan. So you can tune into that well. And we'll also see you on Tuesday. Again, a thank you to our good friends at BetUS for sponsoring the video. Make sure you get that 150% sign-up bonus. Just use the code YouTube150. That's YouTube150. And don't forget to subscribe to the show, the audio side of it. Again, rate and review as well. We appreciate that very much. If you're watching us on YouTube or wherever else you're watching us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We always appreciate a like, and comments are also good. And don't forget to hit the notifications bell so you know when we have a new video. For Mo Moat and for Skocko Branson, I want to thank you guys for being with us here on Silver and Black today. We'll talk to you next time.